Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. Now, if you've been in the speaking a while, you likely have filled out an RFP. That's a request for proposal or two. Am I right? And RFPs are a bit of a mystery to some people. So we wanted to bring in the expert. Welcome to the show, Lisa Rehurek.
Thank you, Jane. I'm excited to be here and to share RFP wisdom with everybody.
You were just reminding me that we talked in 2018 or somewhere around that region. So it was a while ago, and you were kind of thinking about what to do with your business. Catch us up on what, I mean, it looks to me like you've gone all in on RFPs, which was why we brought you in here. But catch us up. Give us a snapshot of what your business looks like today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my business a long time ago, like back in 2011, and I struggled for many years trying to figure out what the niche was. I was trying to be this just general business coach, and RFPs was somewhat part of that just because that was my corporate career. I did a lot with RFPs, and so prior colleagues would call me and say, "Hey, can you help with this and this and this?" And so I just remember being at lunch one day with a friend of mine who said, "You've been looking for a niche, and I think the niche just found you," because the RFP stuff was really starting to be more prevalent, and I got more calls on that. And so, yeah, in 2018, we rebranded and went all in. 2019, I hired my first employee, and now we have, I lose track all the time, but I think we have 15 or 16 employees.
Oh
Actually,
my God.
yeah, and then we also have a bunch of bench contractors too, but it's a ton of fun and yeah, so we're all in on RFPs.
Okay, so what I want to point out to our listeners is that when you go all in on something, it can reap such massive rewards. And honestly, Lisa, I think I've evolved in my thought process on that. If you would have told me back in 2018 when we met, I'm going to go all in on RFPs, I don't know if I would have said, yay, that's a great idea, because I've evolved a lot now. And I know now what the benefit is of going all in, even when people think it's not a good idea. Were there some naysayers along the way for you?
I was one of them, right? Because it's scary. It's scary to go all in. It feels like, well, I can focus on that while still keeping things open for all the other people that are going to need me. And it's just messy to do that. I have heard that a million times, Jane, from coaches, from industry experts. You've got to find the niche. You've got to find the niche. And I always wanted it, but there was this part of me that didn't believe, whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's so true, especially as you're building a business. You can broaden out once you get your sea legs and you get your systems in place and all of that, then you can go broader. But it just made such a big difference to focus on this and plant my flag in it.
I'm so excited for you and congratulations on the success. So let's talk about RFPs. There are people who might be keynoters, list tuning in, and let's just establish who in the speaking industry is really going to be most interested in RFPs. Who do you think?
I would say anybody that wants to do training or coaching in the government space and even in the corporate space. Quite frankly, corporations all the time release RFPs. The bigger corporations, you're generally going to see some RFPs come out for a lot of that stuff. So if you have that add-on of executive coaching, training, any kind of programs like that, you're probably going to come across RFPs at some point.
Okay, so I really want to establish that there is a training section to this. And I want to go deep into the government stuff with you in a little bit, because I think there's some profitability there for people. But also don't forget that there's RFPs for concurrent sessions at association events. And
Yeah.
so a lot of this information can be successful on that. I want to share a story that, oh gosh, that one of my best buddies in the industry shared with us, and I am having a hard time remembering his last name, David. he talked about they would go in. So their goal was to get the keynote. But
Yep.
if it was an association that had concurrence and they asked for RFPs, he would put in a proposal. And then he would, once they said, yes, you've been accepted, they would upsell them into a keynote.
Okay.
So he would reject it and then he would say, but I would do it if you could also get me a keynote as well. And so that's worked quite nicely for him. Oh gosh, I'll remember his name before the end of the thing. This is my almost 60-year-old mind at play here. So apologies, David. I love you, dude. So if you are mainly focusing on keynote speaking, RFPs may not be as much of a part of your world. Am I right?
Agreed. Now, there might be some corporations that are still like, we're going to go to RFP for this, but mostly I don't see that. Mostly they want to be talking to you. They want your speaker reel and, the normal ways you all get business. But I would guess you're probably not going to see a lot of RFPs if keynoting is your solo.
The decision-making process is perhaps a little bit different. And I
Yeah.
also encourage my clients to go in and have the keynote be kind of the start of it, and then to build a whole package around it so that they're solving a big problem for big dollars.
Yeah.
And that may require some sort of process to get approved by the purchasing department and things like that. So, okay. All right. So we kind of know who is going to go after. And let's say you do want to do some training for some of the groups that we have mentioned. If you want to fill out a lot of our RFPs, is there like a templated process? What's the best practice in terms of like cut and pasting? Because you don't want to start from scratch every time, do you?
No, it's brutal to start from scratch. However, the challenge is that every RFP is different. Every format of the RFP,
Yeah.
everyone is different. And so what we suggest you have is what we call like a library or a repository of some
Yes.
standard language. So things that the RFPs ask a lot of, like tell us a little bit more about, how you communicate, tell us, the history of your company, things like that. You can have those kind of ready to go. You
Yeah.
need to customize it for the RFP that you're responding to, but it's so much easier to edit, right? I'd much rather edit something than start from scratch, especially when you're on a deadline. So that
Right.
was our recommendation.
Okay, I like that. Now, you're going to have speech descriptions already available, and having them in a format that you can just cut and paste and go is so helpful. You're going to have your bio on your about page. You're going to be ready to drop those pieces in. I think having a library, I love your term library of information, just drop an RFP, an existing one that you really spent a lot of time and effort in crafting. And let's talk about that a little bit. Craftsmanship. I mean, don't you need to capture their attention right out of the chute? Maybe there are talk titles or something like that that is going to get their attention. What are some things that can help set people apart?
Yeah, great question. Because one of the things that we talk about a lot is distinction. If you don't have the distinction, you're just going to blend in with everybody else. And so that you have there's a statistic out there that says you have 2 to 3 seconds to capture somebody's attention. And even today, there's a lot of talk about how that has decreased. So it's probably more like 1 to 2 seconds now, right? Because the world is crazy.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So, and here's the other thing I always say, Jane, is that you've got to think about the fact that there's a human on the other side of that RFP. A lot of times we think of it transactionally and like the city or the state or the company, but there's a human being and they're reading 3, 5, 10, 20. We just were talking to somebody recently who went through the debrief process and there was 23 other bidders in there. And so this poor person or people are having to read all of those RFP responses. What
Mhm.
are you going to do to stand out? First thing, and you were talking about kind of like copying and pasting, yes, but then please edit.
Yes.
To focus on their solution, like what's in it for them, why are they going to care about your topic, what is it going to do for the challenges that they're having. So you've got to do some upfront, Here's the interesting thing about RFPs. People think, well, I'll just get the RFP, I'll respond to it and be done. There
Mhm.
is work to be done. The more you know about that prospect going into that RFP, because you can't ask them questions once the RFP drops, the better you'll be able to position yourself to capture their attention. But
Okay.
the more you can deal with the what's in it for them piece of it, the better they're going to lean in and pay attention.
I think that's so important that if you do your homework, a lot of people want to kind of copy and paste and just get her done, right? But think about taking that extra, I don't know, 20 minutes of research and using their language back to them. Some of the challenges of our industry are this and this and this. If you can show those in your bullet points, you're going to be that much further along. And maybe you need to talk to some people. Maybe it's going to take you a week to fill out an RFP because you've got questions into some people out on LinkedIn or something like that. There's the research. Can you give me an example? I'm totally putting you on the spot here. Can you give me an example of a client of yours who took the time and it paid off? And what did
Absolutely.
they do?
Yeah, we actually have a client. Her name is Missy Emler, and she has a training company, like an educational slash training company. And she was bidding against a bunch of big time companies. And she was like, I just don't know. I can't be competitive. I'm just a little guy. And I think there was 20 different bidders, and
Mm,
she won. And she won because we helped her position her content so that it was very specific to what that client needed. The other thing you want to do is you want to put in some mic drop moments, those golden nuggets where they're going to be, we call them, I hope that this is okay that I'm going to say this, we call them the oh shit moments, right?
yeah.
I got that term from a coach of mine, but she calls them the oh shit moments, where you kind of drop that there and they're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. You want to prove that you're the industry expert, and that's what Melissa did in her RFP. Like, we proved that she was the one that was going to solve their solution, that she had credibility in the industry, and she blew out the big guys, and she was beside herself. Obviously excited to win the contract, but the fact that she beat them out just took it to a whole other level.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, so give me like an industry so I can wrap my mind around this what Missy was going for. Was it like a government contract? Was it a particular industry? Where was she playing?
She was playing in state government space.
State government. Okay.
That,
And
and
so what types of dollars are these contracts? Are they 10,000, 100,000, a million?
I believe that it was 750,000 over a few years.
Ah, okay. You're giving me some ideas for some of my clients actually, because I don't think you're just exposing me to things that I wasn't really thinking about. So thank you. Thank you. And for those of you who are tuning in, thanks to Lisa Rehurek for kind of maybe inspiring you to go after some of these larger contracts. Are there any strategies, any other strategies? So we talked about research. Anything else we can do to really differentiate ourselves? I know when we were doing selection for the Canadian National Speakers Association, CAPS, it's called. I was looking through a lot of proposals, and for me, the title of the speech they were proposing, because we were talking concurrent sessions, the title either jumped out or didn't. So I would put that would help me reduce the pile, oh, that sounds really good. Okay. And now I have 6, and then I'm going to go down to 3 and so on. And so what are some of the things that people can do to really differentiate aside from that crucial research piece?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First is in your content, again, the more that you can tie your solution to the what's in it for them,
Hmm?
huge. Um, stop using we help, stop using that phraseology, make it more about them.
Okay.
Use statistics when you can to prove things. So you shouldn't just claim like we're very successful at blah, blah, blah. We've seen a lot of success with blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Prove it. You want proof in the pudding, right? For sure. The other kind of strategy that I want to, this feels like a little bit of a digression, but it's really powerful if you have clients that are can be a diverse business. And if you don't know anything about diverse businesses, there are so many ways to be a diverse business, but all of your women clients, if they own 51%, not just own, but own, control, and manage 51% of the business, they can go get certified as a women business enterprise. So women, minority, veterans, all of that. And what's so beautiful about that when you get certified is that there are supplier diversity departments within states. Some states are really great, like Missouri, Pennsylvania, Illinois. They're all in on the supplier diversity. So you can actually call the supplier diversity agency and say, hey, I want to do work in your state. Can you help me do this, this, and this? That's their whole job, is
Oh
to
my
figure out procurement, introduce you to people. And on the corporate space as well, so many corporations have supplier diversity initiatives, and they've got those people as well. And you call them, you build the relationship with the supplier diversity people, and they become your advocate in the organization. So those are huge things to do for that pre-work when I'm talking about research. I mean, if you're a heterosexual white male, you're kind of out of the game here, but almost anybody else can get certified, and there's just so much gold there. You still have to work it. It's not just going to show up, but it's
God.
beautiful.
You're out of the game, but only on that front, only on getting certified diverse. Okay. That leads me to another opportunity that may be awaiting. So I'm going back to say you're applying to the National Association of Widget Makers, and the widget makers have education credits. If you know that you really want to play in this space, and real estate and insurance and a lot of places, I think HR have CEs or CUs. Talk a little, like getting yourself certified for that. It may take some time on the front end, but that might pay off in putting you above other people in the proposals. Am I right?
Absolutely. Again, this kind of comes down to research. Are they requiring that as a requirement, or is it just a nice to have that's going to differentiate you? Right. And one of the things that I always suggest people doing is like focus. So I'm going to talk about state government because that's just the easiest to do.
Okay.
There are aggregators out there. So one is called findrfp.com. It's like $29.99 a month. What I would say is go out there, put in your keyword, sign up for it, even if there might even be a trial. Put your keywords in,
Okay.
see what you get. So just see what kind of RFPs start coming out, and you can start seeing, here's what some of the requirements are. They are going to require CE credits. They are going to require that kind of certification. They require, a lot of states do require MeBe that minority women business enterprise certification. You can see what some of those insurance requirements are going to be, because that trips up a lot of like solopreneurs,
Yeah.
single, right? Sole proprietors. But just kind of see what kind of RFPs are out there and start to get a feel for their terms and conditions.
Oh, that's so interesting to me. So findrfp.com, did you say?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm thinking about one of my clients who's in the education space. She speaks to teachers and educators. She could go in and maybe search. Could you search under your topic of education?
Yeah, it's all driven off of keywords. So she could
Okay.
he or she can search. Um,
Okay.
and then also again sign up and put your keywords in. And if you're not getting what you think, adjust. Sometimes it takes a couple months to play around with that, adjust your keywords, but there's a lot of gold in that. That's some of your research homework.
That's so good. Okay. So some of these things that you can do to kind of just distinguish yourself slightly more to get a little bit of a leg up. Are there any common pitfalls or mistakes that speakers and trainers should avoid when
Yeah.
doing the process? Do tell.
We do a lot of what we call an RFP audit. So we look at past RFPs and we see the same themes that people do wrong. And also we ask a lot of evaluators, tell us your top 3 pet peeves. Like, what's the number 1 mistake people make? And here are the 3 mistakes that people make the most. The number 1 is that what I'm telling you is that they talk too much about themselves, where I was talking about we help you, right? Like, you've got to relate it to their challenge, and their, even if you see a different challenge and you know that's not really their challenge, you still have to speak their language. And to your point, Jane, use their vernacular. Like, it's really good for you to use their language and understanding theirs. Another piece of the puzzle is making sure that you answer all of the question and
Oh,
it's asked. And this sounds so ridiculous, and I've had people say to me, well, we would never miss anything. And inevitably, when we review RFP responses, we find that people have missed a part of the question. And I think we get too much in our heads. Like, I remember one in particular, it was a yes no question, and they just rambled on about all sorts of stuff, and you never really understood, like, is it a yes or a no?
yeah.
So if yes or no question, answer it yes, and then you can extrapolate off of that. But
Yes, and yes. Talk about, you kind of touched on it a second ago, wants versus needs. They're asking for this. I know that they need this.
yes,
Which do you focus on in your proposal? What they are asking for, I'm assuming?
always focus on what they're asking for, because you've got these evaluators that have score sheets, and if you don't give them what they ask for, they're going to give you a doesn't meet expectations or whatever they're scoring. Because so you want to give them what they ask for and then give them more. But here's the deal, you've got to be really careful there, because you don't want to just start rattling off all the stuff and, sounding like a know-it-all. You
Mm-hmm.
maybe say something like, there's something else you may want to consider. As having been in this industry for XYZ years, we've seen a lot of businesses that have the same challenge that you have. And in addition to XYZ, which is what they're asking for, we might also suggest that you do XYZ. So you want to be a little bit more consultative about it and not make them feel small for not knowing it.
Right. Don't shame them. Okay. So government contracts, we're talking state level. Are we talking national as well?
So we can't, there's federal, which is a whole other beast. My company doesn't focus on federal because it is very unique, right? But there are certifications for federal. There's a lot of small business set asides for federal, but federal's a beast. It is a beast. And
Wonderful.
we focus on what's called the SLED, which is state, local, and education. The smaller the entity, generally, the easier they are to work with, the smaller their RFPs are, the smaller their contracts are. But it's still like, if this is something new to you, maybe start looking in the education, the universities, the whole education realm, right?
Okay.
And then local municipalities, counties, things like that, they put out tons of RFPs for stuff all the time. The state ones are going to be a little more lucrative. They tend to be more of the 2 to 3 year contracts, but it will take maybe a little bit longer to get into those.
Yeah, let's talk about the process so people kind of understand what to expect. You're going to put in this much time on the front end, but the payoff is going to be this at the back end. And how long do you think it might take? I think Missy was a great example. Talk through maybe another example of a state contract that maybe took some time but paid off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a really extreme example, and this is not in the speaker coach world, it's or trainer world. This is a consulting firm, but we
Okay,
literally worked on the RFP for 3 years.
3 years.
650 pages, the response.
650 pages. Okay, so you lost me there. I'm like, I'm out. Okay.
Example for the type of work that we're talking about here, I mean, you're likely going to get an RFP. It's going to be a 2 to 3 week turnaround. So please don't think you have plenty of time, because RFP responses take a long time if you're going to do it right and you really want to win. The beautiful thing about an RFP, so there's like, what do they say? There's 4 things that need to be present in order for you to make a sale: trust, the need, the budget, and the urgency. Well, the need is there because they released an RFP. The urgency is there because they've got a due date on it and they've got money for it. Might not be the budget you want them to have, but it's there, right? And so now your job is to build trust, but it's such a beautiful thing because you're like, they're handing this to you on a silver platter. Your only job is to build trust and show them that you're the right solution. So you want time to be able to do that. This is not just an exercise of throw in a bunch of stuff and send it off. You're going to lose, right? And then the beauty too is you get a longer term contract and it's yours to lose. As long as you do good work and they continue to have this need, you're going to continue to get work off of it. And it makes it so much easier to budget staff, to, manage timelines, manage your business. I'm such a big proponent of government contracts because of that.
Okay. So is there a way to find out ahead of time, like what the maximum budget is going to be? Do they ever disclose that information in an RFP? Do they give you a range, or are you going in blind, not knowing whether or not you're wasting your time?
We would suggest never going in blind. And the reason is that if you're going in blind, it's what we call bidding cold, and you have less than a 5% chance to win. Sometimes they'll put the budget in the RFP, but still, most of the time they won't. And so we always recommend starting the conversation long before that RFP hits the streets, because that's where you're going to get that gold, right? They're not going to put in they're likely not going to put in their budget, but you might get that out of them in a conversation. But you might also get other really good gold out of them in a conversation when they're talking about, yeah, we're so frustrated with our current vendor because they don't do X, Y, and Z. That might be a comment in passing, and now I'm going to write to that in my response to make sure that they really see it. So the other thing you can do is you can do some research around past contracts and see kind of what they're paying other people for the same thing.
How hard is it to speak to a human at the end of the RFP? Like, could you say, I have a follow-up question about the RFP that you sent out, and ask for clarification or something? Is it a robot over there and you're never going to get to talk to anybody, or what?
Well, generally, once the RFP is released, you have to follow their very explicit instructions, and they will tell you who their contact person is and whether you can ask questions at any time or whether there's an open Q&A period or a bidders conference. But generally, they're not going to answer. That is not the time to try to relationship build. It's generally a procurement person that is assigned to that, not the actual buyer, the agency owner that owns the contract. So again, you want to have those conversations ahead of time because you can't have them once the RFP hits the streets.
Lisa, this is golden, and I think maybe, I don't know, I'm inspired. Hey, I want to go get an RFP. Go get a contract. I don't even know where. But you're just getting me thinking about all the opportunity that is out there for people. I think my takeaway is spend the time on the front end and do it well. That's kind of my takeaway. What would be the final tip before I want to ask you one more question before I let you go, though? What would be your final tip on putting in an RFP? Is there a big picture mindset that we need to take going into this?
Yeah, for some reason, everybody just hates RFPs. I get it. They're a pain in the butt. And so you go in with that mentality that like, oh, this is going to be so hard. But if you flip that mindset to say, oh my gosh, how great I have this opportunity. I could
Yes.
put on paper, submit this, and win this great contract. So
Yes.
flipping that mindset around is going to help.
Opportunity is the key word, because it's true. There is a big opportunity. Do they ever come back and ask you for clarification on anything on an RFP?
You mean our clients, or do you mean
No, the people who are going through and reviewing the RFPs, is there ever like a follow-up question, set out to 2 or 3 of the people who submitted?
most of the time not, but what'll happen is that they'll go to finalists. So they'll ask for a best and final offer. We call it a BAFO. or they'll ask for finalist presentations, or they'll send a question out, the same question out to multiple bidders.
Okay, that's really cool. That's good to know. Tell me, what have you learned about, going all in on this one idea to build a seven-figure business? What is that like for you in your experience? You talked about how many employees? Dozens of employees. What's that like for you these days?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot more fun than the year that I made $26,000 for sure. But
Good.
it's just interesting because I'm an entrepreneur at heart and I have ideas all over the place, but it forces me to focus. And my team still every now and then has to be like, Lisa, not now. It's a great idea, but not now.
Reel
Like,
it in. Reel it in, girl. Yes, yes.
and when you have a focus, then you know how to reel it back in and say, okay, let's go back here and stay the course, because that's where the results are. That's where the results are showing up. And so when you've got all sorts of things going on, you can't possibly focus yourself. I'll tell you the other thing that's beautiful about it is that I am so much more clear when I speak it. So now other people can understand. Before I was like, well, I was a business coach. Well, what kind of businesses do you help with? Well, anything. I can help you with anything. What the
Yeah.
heck was that, right? But if we're confused, other people will be confused.
Buyers are confused. So good, so good. I want to circle back to my friend David, my good friend, whose name I could not remember in the moment, is David Averin. Thank you, David, for sharing the technique about putting in for a breakout session and then flipping it over to a keynote. That's David Averin. He did a lesson for my school, which was one of our most popular lessons in the Wealthy Speaker School. Lisa, if people want to connect with you, what should they do?
I would say connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Lisa Rehurek. I'm the only one out there. As a matter of fact, I think you can type in REH and you'll find me, because there's not very, yeah,
Okay.
with people, and I'm happy to answer questions via Messenger there.
And get this, people, her company is called the RFP Success Company. There's no like fancy Asian word that you don't understand in order to mean the company name. You get exactly what it is. I love it when people just call it what it is. The RFP Success Company. So good, Lisa. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. We will put some links to you in, and also to the findrfp.com in the show notes. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for listening. Those of you who are listening, are you inspired? I'm inspired. I think we got to go find some RFPs to fill out. All right. Thank you, Lisa. We'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now, everyone.
Thanks, Jane.